Welcome to the Embodiment Podcast. This show is for you if you see the body as more than a brain taxi. It's for people interested in coming home to the body as a holistic aspect of who we are and how we live. Episodes contain practical tips, exercises you can take away, and interviews with specialists from around the world. I'm your host for today, Mark Walsh. Okay, on the show today, Marina Kronkvist. So Marina, I would say, is a play specialist. Would that be fair to say, Marina?
I work with play, but I do not want to call myself a play specialist.
How would you describe yourself?
I have, through the play I have become very good at knowing myself.
Uh-huh.
And that's basically the invitation I also extend to other people who join me in play, to get to know themselves and love themselves in this relational space with me, because that's what I'm committed to do, to practically love myself in that space, which means to take care of that I'm only engaging in dynamics that actually generate goodness in me, and proactively not engaging in dynamics that do not generate something good in me. And to me, that's a very practical way of loving myself.
Uh-huh. Let's take it a step back. Actually, this is great. We're diving right in here, and I'm curious how you got into this. Like, often I ask to begin interviews by saying, what's your story with the body? So, where did you grow up? What happened? How did you get here now? Let's hear a bit about your story.
Yes. I grew up in Finland, in a small village countryside. I was very physical as a child and loved, that was the beginning of the 70s. I whatever I found in my village that was physical. So I was in gymnastics, I was in football. And unfortunately, there was no dance in my village that I knew of. But anyway, so very physical, and loved playing with friends on the lawn, like making up all kinds of own gymnastic and dancing, basically, and sort of what I've reflected on with the football was that was also very, because I was in football, so we were in one division sort of when we played in my team, and then it was our team. We had so much fun together, and I loved that aspect. And then at some point I was sort of invited to join a team that was a little bit further away, and so I was basically sold to another team, and that was higher up in the division. And it was so striking that when I was there and was in my first sort of, game, like competition, where it was not just training, a match. So then it was so much harder, and this whole thing of the fun was not there for me anymore, because how we had played in our team, we were always, whenever there was with the opposing team, there was also this sharing of concern for each other, and like, so that was something that was very striking for me. So I just very quickly returned to my team where it was fun. So that was sort of this first, for me, a very first something that is play mode and something that is contest mode, like a very concrete sense of that. So that was sort of my childhood, basically.
I think that's quite a common experience for people, that they have this natural play as kids, and that might even go into kind of formalized games, that spirit of play. And at some point that gets lost, in a competitive environment or a scholastic environment, it gets more serious, and people go, and there's a sort of great sense of loss for many people in that.
Yes. Yes. So it was definitely something there that was where I made a choice. Like, I don't want to go there. That's not what I want. Yeah. And then, I mean, the way I got into body as I work with it today is that in my around 25, 26, 27, had a huge breakdown of what I have worked with before. I consider my work passion. That dropped away. And also in my personal romance relationship, something shifted. Whatever I had understood to be love and that I was chasing up until then, that was
Say a little bit about that word. So I understand you're a Swedish-speaking Finn.
Yes.
So I know there's a sort of ethnic group in Finland who are Swedish-speaking, certain villages and this kind of thing. Tell us a little bit about that, because you sent me something about this I thought was interesting.
So the word love in Swedish, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, because in this breakdown for me, it was very clear that whatever I had experienced to be love died, so to say. And then, yes, then I suddenly saw that the word love in Swedish is kärlek, and it has play inherent in it. So basically, kär means in love, and lek is play. So it was that sort of made love come to life for me again, because I could relate to love as play. And it is this very concrete thing where something in a relational space, something good is generated for both. And which today I know is also co-regulation.
Okay, so from a sort of neuroscience point of view, a kind of neuroscience win-win.
Yes, exactly. So that was basically for myself how when I started seeing that, it was like, okay, yes, now I can relate to love again, because that's just basically what I made it to be for me.
Lovely. And there's this idea of love as something creative, like we make love,
Yeah.
Or love is somehow kind of generate something. And obviously the archetype kind of romantically is a child, but then there's all sorts of other things, right, that can be generated from this kind of creative win-win meeting.
Yes, exactly. Yes, win-win is a very, very important concept in the whole.
Okay, so tell us about the work you do now.
Yes, so I consider myself yet to be very creative, working as an artist in many ways. But so first I wrote a book about a lot of those experiences that I told about. And then I was a body worker and also became a sexability coach. And in that process, I sort of wanting to weave together body work, sexability, coaching, and a continuation of my book. So then this that I work with now a lot, called ritual play, was developed and born in that sort of calling in. So the ritual play was a session concept that I developed for myself to work, because as a body worker, people were passively lying and I was the one doing all the doing that happened on the body. And I wanted this more meeting. Somehow it was that I wanted there to be a meeting, that the client was also active. And yes, so shortly then ritual play was born, and as an experiment first, because it was like, why would anyone pay for this? What's the benefit? It was really an experiment. Then, yes, it caught immediately. It did have some, it was met with good response. And then, so other people also started asking if I could teach it to them. So that's basically what I do today. I give ritual play sessions, and then I teach ritual play to others, and also I work as a therapist and a sex coach. So
So paint a picture for us. I saw a video on it, but for the listeners, paint a picture of what a ritual play workshop might be like, what happens in there, some of the nuts and bolts of that.
Yes. So it's ritual play is that there's a defined space. So we play on mats. So there's an invitation, like there's many ways that participants can participate. So one is to join the invitation of playing with someone on a mat, but also watching or just sitting and deciding when they want to join, or just if they watch the whole time. So it's really a choice, or it's always very important, the aspect of choice. But playing and meeting for a defined time, someone on a mat with 4 simple invitations and rules to guide the interaction.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are the rules to guide the interaction?
So to not physically injure each other.
That's sensible.
Then that there's a stop word. Whenever you would want the interaction to stop, you just say stop. We practice that also, so it comes very easily.
Fully consent aware, then, I imagine. Especially
yes.
given your sort of work, sexual work, that kind of makes a lot of sense to me. That
yes,
being forced,
and also because the invitation is to be non-verbal with each other on the mat, so you express instead through sound, breath, voice, movement, and also space, how you use space. And there's also this that you can step out of the mat and the other can't follow. So that's one of the rules. And then yes, so but also because there is this, that there is the nonverbal aspect, then this, I mean, we store everything that has ever happened to us in the body, as we know, body keeps a score. So the risk of being triggered just by a look or by someone's smell, like when we really go into this nonverbal, somatic, embodied selves in relational space, there is so much triggering that can come up. And I mean, that's the play material also. All the good impulses and responses. That's like, there's so much play material that we each come with. But there's also the risk, that there's a triggering that doesn't feel pleasurable or good in any way. And then it's important to have access to this, to say, stop, stop, no more. Let's just sit down and connect. But yeah, the invitation is there to not censor oneself, but to if the impulse is to be close, to be close. If the impulse is to have lots of distance, then to follow that impulse. If the impulse is to play with aggressive or more high energy impulses, to go with them, but sort of within, to give everything in a way so there is actually choice.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so there's choice. People can step out. They can go, if both people agree, it can be kind of more vigorous, can be more gentle. What are some of the other guidelines there?
So self-care. So this was the thing, to not engage in anything that doesn't, to not engage in anything that doesn't sort of generate something good in me or that person, or and so yes, and to actively also then initiate and go with the impulses that are actually there.
And is it a sexual space or a non-sexual space, or it flows? I mean, I know I've been around play work for a little while. Like, I got Fred Donaldson, I really appreciate original play.
Yes.
And sometimes in these play spaces, like, right, it's explicitly a non-sexual space.
Yes.
Other times it's explicitly a sexual place. Other times it's like, well, we'll see if that comes up or not. Like, where are you on that continuum?
Yes, so I'm also an apprentice in original play for Donaldson. So yes, that's very explicitly a non-sexual space. So ritual play is a sex-positive space, which means playing with erotic impulses is available if that impulse is there, but there's no push for it. It's not anything that is looked for. It's not. Yes,
I've often thought that position that you take there is a sort of more natural, but on the other hand, more sophisticated or potentially more challenging position. So on the one hand, if I go into a place and they say, this is entirely non-sexual, I'm like, well, bad luck. I'm a sexual creature. You know what I mean? Like, I'm never entirely non-sexual. You know, it might be 1%, it might be 100%, but that's just part of who I am. So that's an impossibility. And you're asking me to cut off part of myself, you know?
Yes.
And equally, when it's like clear, okay, this, you know, we're in a sexual domain right now, that's very clear, but this is almost, it feels more natural, yet a little bit more challenging almost when there's this natural flow.
Yes. Yeah, it is. But yes, it's, that's definitely, I mean, because I think it's important also this, to meet someone where maybe, one person has a sexual impulse charge, erotic charge in experience that, and the other might not. So I also think it's so valuable in relational space to learn to be with that. Because it's never anything in the meetings that happen. You're never responsible for the other person. We're all
sure
responsible for ourselves. And and this whole thing that also gets cultivated, because one of the invitation is to play in a reversible way, which is this, when I said like to be which comes from a lot of Feldenkrais practice, that's in the background. So to be able to allow whatever feeling state I have to be present, but also to be able to reverse it if it's there's no sort of interesting meeting that happens with the other person, you know.
Okay, so reversibility, as I understand it from Feldenkrais, is, for example, you wouldn't do a movement that you fall into because there's this attitude of like you can actually back up, you can go in or out of something.
Yes,
it's normally a kind of sort of physical skill, but you're extending that into the emotional territory of like, hey, I could be like, wow, you're really hot, and then be like, oh, you're totally not interested. Okay, never mind, and you kind of be able to come out of that.
Exactly. So where is something that's actually like, if that wasn't where, if I want to play with you, like if that's my impulse to go to be in dynamic with you, because the play space is also big enough. So you don't actually, both could be doing yoga by themselves, basically.
And this one-sided sexuality, I want to focus on this. This is really interesting because nobody talks about this.
Yeah.
And if they do, it's normally sort of blaming the person on either side, right?
Yes.
Like, hey, she's frigid, or he's a sex pest, or, you know.
Yes.
And now, assuming consent and good boundaries, for example, there's situations like if I'm on myself the other day, I'm a teacher, I'm dressed well, I'm in a position of authority. There were several people in the room who seemed pretty clearly attracted to me, but because of the nature of that situation, that was very one-sided. And I was very clean and clear that that's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
But equally, I wouldn't want to like close that down in them. Or another situation I've had like that is like, well, I've really liked a friend of mine who is a woman and found her really sexually attractive. And she's like, I'm totally not interested in you sexually, but I still want to be friends. That's a situation guys find themselves in all the time.
Yes.
Right? And it's like, okay, I've noticed most people aren't skillful with this.
Yes.
And it can become either like, I can't be around you, it's too much, which is a shame because sometimes you lose a really good friend.
Yes.
Or it can be kind of like, you're sleazy because you find me attractive and I don't like you. Like I heard someone say, definition of creepy is when a man finds a woman attractive and she doesn't find him attractive. And it was said as a joke, but there was some painful truth in that. You know, like say a bit more about these uncomfortable kind of one-sided situations.
Yeah, I think it's someone brought it up also recently. I think in the last sort of festival I was in, like this whole, but men saying this, but men are always feeling sexual around women, and I do not agree to that. Like, that's such generalizations. So there's individuals, or all people are.
Yeah, there's a basic biological truth of A, we don't have cycles, and in the same way, and
Yes.
B, pregnancy is expensive and sperm is cheap. So male animals across all species tend to be less picky. This is a fact of biology. I don't care what fucking Scandinavian social web says. This is a fact of biology. So there is a gender difference on average, though there are definitely times when I'm not horny and my wife is, for example, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's definitely flow to that, but on average, there's some truth in that. Come on.
Yes. So, yes, there's a lot of men also that has a different sort of sexual expression.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't agree.
Not willing to admit basic biological fact there, then. I know biology doesn't do well in Scandinavia, but you don't think there's a gender difference on average there? Really? I mean, come on, I'm pushing back here because it just seems like absolute denialism.
So now we can take a sidetrack into erotic blueprints, which I work with also.
Yeah. Nice system, yeah.
Yeah, of it, the sort of energetic, the sensual, the sexual, the kinky, and shapeshifters. And the stereotypical way of seeing men is that men are sexual, always, like it's always a genital focus. It's always wanting to touch also, and the typical erogenous zones on the body, and the visual. So, and easily. So that's sort of what I hear you say when,
There's the stereotype that's not always true, but is based on reality.
But yes, so there's also a lot of women that has that blueprint strong,
sure.
And there's a lot of men that has sensual and energetic strong, and yes. So then it's just different expression.
Okay, so the gender thing aside, maybe that's a personal thing I don't want to push. This, I'll let it go. This idea of whatever gender, there's a mismatch. How do we handle that skillfully? Yeah. Like, I've got a friend who she's gorgeous, and she's totally not into me. like, how do I handle that?
So play, yes, invite her to a ritual play. I mean, there's a private situation where I had with a friend that was, yes, he was very much into me, and I didn't have that a response.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed him as a friend, and he was also curious on ritual play, and so then we decided one day we were going to play ritual play together as friends, and just because we like each other as people. And see, and I could, from what he said, I could sort of pick up. Yes, okay. I hear what he has, a sort of expectation or hope that it will be. So it was very, very interesting to go into this ritual play space, nonverbal, each following our own what's actually there. Mm. And yes, for him, he showed a lot of skin and was yes, it was very sexual the way he showed up in the play space, and I just took a lot of distance, and I was watching, and I just didn't join, but it was really, really interesting to go towards, instead of being just like in this, like, okay, I don't agree, like,
yeah.
So somehow we we were in this negotiation of it non-verbally. And it was so, later when we came out of the space and talked, so it was so interesting, his reflection, but that it was so hard to actually admit that this is actually what was true for me.
And
it's that he could come to some peace, because before he didn't believe it, and through being in this dynamic together, he could actually, okay, yeah, that's what it is.
This idea of sex positivity may not be familiar to all listeners, but as I understand it, it's the idea that any consenting, adult sexual expression is okay and allowed, and we don't have to feel ashamed or guilty of our natural sexuality.
Yeah, yes. But of course, I mean, it all depends on the facilitator, what kind of space they open up for. For instance, so yes, is it like, there's a whole spectrum of sex positive spaces where you can have underwear on, or where, all intercourse and other expressions are welcome. So it's a spectrum, a sex positive space. You still, as a facilitator, you put your limits to what kind of sex positive space you are opening up to.
Yeah. Quick break to tell you about our program. So as well as the podcast, we have various kinds of online training. So we have the Embodied Yoga Principles online training, as well as in-person training. Embodied Yoga Principles for yogis who want to get yoga off the mat, specialize in the psychology of yoga, unique postures. It's a 5-day training. We have one in Brighton, one in Berlin, and one in Austin, Texas. So if you go to Embodied Yoga Principles, you can find them. Also the online version of the training for people who can't make those dates. Excellent courses. The Embodied Yoga Principles training for the yogis. For the coaches and facilitators, we have the Embodied Facilitator course. This is our flagship course. We offer it in Moscow, also in the UK. A 9-month adventure, real deep dive into embodiment. It's the biggest embodiment program I do. It could be like movement people who want to work in business more. We have people like dancers and martial arts teachers come to learn more about working in mainstream settings, but also for coaches and trainers who want something really well structured, who want to work on themselves, who want to learn practical tools, learn how to work with the body in facilitation. If you can't make EFC, and it is a big ask, there's an online course we run called the Foundations of Embodiment Certification. So if you go to Embodied Facilitator, you'll find the in-person, and then dash FEC, F-E-C, F for Freddy, E-C for Charlie, FEC, you'll come up with the Foundations of Embodiment Certification, and also do one-day events all around the world. So I'm just about to do a tour to Slovenia, Berlin, Copenhagen, Brussels, Amsterdam, and Brighton. The Brighton one is £10, which is like $15. So if you're coming from abroad, that could make that affordable. The Brighton one's always like a really big fun one, so that's coming up. Again, go to the Embodied Facilitator course to see all of these events. And we have a little online evening as well. If people just want a taster, again, that's £10. That's a 3-hour thing coming up as well. Embodiedfacilitator.com, embodiedfacilitator.com, and you'll find all those events, or Embodied Yoga Principles for the yoga ones. Okay, so that's the stuff that I sell. Oh, and the book, the embodiment book. If you want to get my book and learn about embodiment through reading, you can also get the embodiment book available at Amazon and no good bookstores. So there we go. Excuse the interruption, and back to the episode. Okay, great. So what do you think people will get from this kind of place to play that you provide? I saw some lovely testimonials on YouTube. It seems like people have really got a lot from it.
Yes, it seems so. I'm not. This whole thing that it became a group practice also, that was never my intention. That sort of was born out of itself. So, yeah, I do. If I tend to be like, I don't want anything for other people, and that's sort of really important for me. So
to let go of the goal orientation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Which is, for me, one definition of play, right? Like
Exactly.
non-goal orientated, connected, creative activity.
Yes.
That's almost the start of the definition. If you try and get somewhere with play, it kind of ceases to be play.
Yeah.
Mm.
I would say my bias is that I want people to feel loved. So that's, I want that for myself. I want that. So that's my bias.
Isn't it strange that we have to go to these workshops to play or relearn to play or have space to play? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of, and I get it. And I love going to contact improv because it can be playful. There's places I go that I know I can be more playful. And it's kind of a strange situation in the modern world that we find ourselves needing these workshops and set places,
But for me, it's not so much to learn to play. Part of this work, what I for me, I'm interested in restoring people's authority about themselves. So what are the spaces I offer is with that in mind, and a lot of the workshops that we go to in embodiment, because we've been trained from birth until grave. There are rituals in place where we are stripped of that authority, where there's an outer authority that says how we are.
It's a loss of agency and
Yes.
relearning of a natural agency.
Yes. So I think we definitely need these spaces where we're giving a different message than in school, than in biomedical examinations and so on.
It's a big thing. It's a big thing that it's weird. I've had this experience in many situations where I've said no to something. I have a good strong no, and people have just reacted really like I'm bizarre, and I'm like, well, this is like me, my body, and my life, and like I have a right over this, and you do what you want, like I'm okay with whatever decisions you make if they're not impacting me, So.
Yes.
And let's take a slight change of track here, because as well as being sex positive, I know you're deaf positive. Don't hear so much about deaf positivity. Can you say what that is?
Yeah, it was. Basically, it means just wanting a different cultural expression around death, also, because personally, I have a lot of personal history with death. My parents died when I was 3 years old in a car accident 6 years ago. However long, yes, about 6 years ago. Also, my only sibling, my brother, died in a car accident, and lots of other stories. So I have definitely felt this need for a different kind of culture around death and how people approach death. And it was so there's there's Peter Banky that's part of he developed something called the Festival on Death and Dying. So with this endeavor, and I got really, really, really enthusiastic about that. So last year I had the chance to sort of be in a play space where death was the theme for 6 days, and that was amazing. That was it was Peter Banky and Felix Ruckert that had it together outside Berlin, so it was a conch event.
There seems to be a whole movement towards like death cafes and planning your own funerals. And my reading of it, and tell me if I've misread this, is that something like, hey, death is part of life. Actually being aware of it can enrich life. And rather than hide it away, let's just be clear that this is just part of nature and part of the human condition.
Yes, Yes. Yeah. 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 It would be, I mean, this whole idea, like as soon as a body is dead, it's shipped away. We don't have the possibility to actually physically handle a dead body. And I think that strips us of a lot of acceptance of death, where it gets to this, living at all cost. And I mean, it's a huge, complex subject, so I don't pretend in any way to have. I just know I long for it, and I thrive when I have that possibility to be in this 6-day immersion of death being a very accessible thing to talk about with people and to play with also. So.
I fairly regularly lead death meditations on my courses, and interesting responses I find. You know, if it's the first time everyone's ever gone there, they can find it quite confronting.
Yeah.
And however, once people have done it 2 or 3 times, or they've had some experience with this kind of work, and they come to it, they normally find it enriching. It gives them access to life purpose, to gratitude, to a tenderness, and it kind of gives a layer of richness to the lived experience, which without death, somehow that richness is a bit black and white.
Yes. Yeah, I agree totally to that. So, death positivity. So, there's a huge movement working towards that.
Well, Finland does have the most death metal bands per capita, according to one graph that I saw. So if it can be done anywhere, it would be done in the Nordic countries, perhaps Scandinavian countries. As I know you're not Scandinavian, Nordic, I should say. So maybe this is the dark winters of the place to explore that.
Exactly. Yes, the winter, the cyclical death.
I did a training in the Arctic Circle in Oulu, I think it's called, just in the north of Finland in January. And it was like this deep, dark experience. And I thought, wow, this is really going to color your embodiment if you spend half the year in this kind of like dark environment, you know? So I was definitely like, okay, there's something different here. And well, we've done sex and death. We might as well do money. So let's do all the interesting ones. And let's just keep it juicy here, Marina. So this is one of my favorite subjects. We actually have marketing people on this podcast because most of the people in the embodiment space are rubbish, just horrible at marketing, horrible with money. And I'm on a sort of bit of a crusade to help my community get a bit more skilled this way. I mentor young people in this area as well. So I'd love to hear your views on money and our relationship to money.
What I discovered was that and I was very much I had chosen a life where I wasn't earning much and I didn't spend much. That was sort of up until 6 years ago, that was my chosen path. Then when my brother died, because he had a gambling addiction, had some degree dealt with it, so that sort of made me start to reflect on money and started doing I did this it was very much around the emotional relationship to money, so that's how I started. And then also became a tapping into wealth coach, so learning to take other people through these journeys. And what I discovered is really when I go into our relationship with money, it was just like doing the same journey around sex, that it brings up all the vulnerability. So yes, and money, of course, I have been interested in it as an entrepreneur, how we show up, and all these our deserving, our to be seen, to be willing to ask for what we want, and to believe that we deserve it. And
so I want to highlight a couple of things here. So,
yeah.
First of all, the relationship between sex and money and some of the similarities.
Yes.
And also how it tunes into some very deep issues. Like, can I be seen? Can I ask for what I want? Do I have a sense of deserving or not deserving?
Yeah.
These are some quite core, kind of almost existential themes that money touches, right?
Yes. Yes. And close, usually sexual relationships is the same thing.
Say more about that connection or that similarity.
Well, I mean, it goes back to sort of what we have been habituated to believe in childhood. I mean, this is usually that we are replaying that. Do I have to only like and a lot of women have this, that they just have to give and give and give, and are not. It's learned culturally,
right?
And so to actually come into this, I have a right to ask for things in return for what I give, and so on.
It can be frustratingly difficult with lovers to sometimes like, what do you want? What do you like? Tell me this or this. Like, and the same thing I've seen with students, more female students than men. There are also male students to be like, okay, just ask for the money. Like, okay, you're on the phone to the client. They want what you sell. Then you're offering a workshop. Just tell them the price. Like, that's a remarkably difficult thing for a lot of my students to do.
Yes, it is. It's and it's so it is this. What have you learned with your in childhood? If you asked for affection, how was it met? So we replay all of these scenarios. They can for me, it's definitely been the same things. I have to catch myself. When is it that these patterns kick in, and how do I change them? Because it's also a relation. It's a relation where we're getting nurturing, and we're getting fed with what we need in these financial relationships. So it's the same patterns that kick in.
The same basic patterns. Okay. So there's such a, we have erotic blueprints as a way of understanding, different lovers may have different ways of connecting. Some a little bit more heart, some more energetic, some more physical. Is there such a thing as like money blueprints? I think there's probably a few systems out there. Like, what are some of the main patterns you see? Like, not deserving is what I see, or acquisitate, people that just have to hoard and acquire and acquire and acquire. And the opposite, they're not able to be generous and spend money and enjoy their life, Like, what are some of the main patterns you see around?
Yes, but it's rarely people in our industry that have that.
That's true. From the left and from alternative culture, far less. That's true.
Yes.
There are some, though. There are some.
Yeah. I mean, in this tapping into wealth, we speak about 5 kinds of money. So income goals, savings, and debt. And then there's toxic money, which is very interesting. It's when you are receiving money, but it comes with emotional it doesn't lift you up emotionally, it brings you down. It's like you have to, that can be when people are on benefits from the state. That can be that if they feel like that it's a shameful thing, or when they get child support money from a spouse, that they really have to fight for it.
Yeah, I know a friend in that situation. She really doesn't get on with the guy, but she also, he's her main source of income.
Yeah.
And it just has to show him every receipt, and it's a really tricky situation for her.
Yeah. so so that's sort of and so then yeah, it's really interesting sort of with these kind of money that there's specific emotional behavior. If we are like we easily have debt, then there's specific sort of emotional things that can be looked at that sort of systematically goes. Or if you have problem with putting income goal.
Yeah. So I'll be a bit selfish here then. So I haven't had debt for years. When I got married, I decided to become debt free, and I've really enjoyed that. It's felt like physically liberating. And it's like, wow, still have an overdraft, but I'm very rarely in it. I actually use it how an overdraft's meant to be used, like an emergency dip in.
Yeah.
And I haven't had any debt for years until this year. I'm putting on this big embodiment conference.
Yeah.
And I'm borrowing probably around £200,000, which is more money than I've ever borrowed. And it's interesting. I find it quite stressful.
Yeah.
And debt has a particular feeling.
Yes.
You know, even though I've done all the maths and I go, okay, this is a pretty good bet and this is going to be good for me and everyone in the long run. I'm not worried about paying people back. Investors, if you're out there, get in touch. You know, I mean, genuinely, I've looked at all of them. We've done this. We've had success with 3 different conferences now. So we've got a proven model. But even telling myself all that, I'm like, shit, I'm in debt. There's a feeling to that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like any tips, I'm being a bit selfish here, but any tips here for me? Like this year of debt that I'm, as an entrepreneur, I'm gambling with kind of thing, you know?
It's a long time since I've worked with this whole money thing. So, where do you feel it in your body?
Okay, yeah, somatically orientating around it, like a little in my back, a little fight flight, maybe, you know?
Yeah.
I won't put you on the spot then.
Yes.
Feel free to text me later if you come up with any brainwaves for handling this new level. In some ways, I think, being an entrepreneur is about the ability to be equanimous with risk and also with public criticism.
Yes.
Like two things that come with everyone. Like I'm currently mentoring someone who's doing a conference and they're very capable professional, but this is the first time they've done such an event where they've been so public.
Yes.
And it was the first time she'd taken on so much financial risk and the first time she'd been so publicly perceived. And it's like, no matter what you do, there's always criticism. There's always people that don't like it, and it's been very interesting because it reminded me what it was like in the early days of being an entrepreneur, that it's not an easy thing you put yourself up for when you make yourself that visible.
Yes, exactly. And for a lot of people, again, have this strong pleasing factor with them from childhood. And that's something that is definitely, if you put yourself in the arena, as Brené Brown says, you're going to have, the people who resonate with you, but also the people who criticize you. And for someone, if you have people-pleasing tendencies, you will need to address them to be able to actually show up.
Because you can't please everyone, right? So
no, you can't.
What I've seen with all female students actually noticing that is that because they want to make everyone happy, they take it very hard when they get even one bad review or one bit of criticism. And as you were saying, sexually, this can be a thing, the sort of pleaser, the person who wants to do like, what do you need, honey?
Yes.
And it's like, but I want you to have a good time too. So it's like, that is a real, like, what is your advice for, I don't have this at all, by the way. I'm a people antagonizer, not pleaser. So like, what, I don't know what advice to give to my students to have this. Like, what should I tell them if they're people pleasers? What's a good tip for them?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is just to get aware of that. If they have that tendency, and to really, I would say, to really practice this, always asking for what you want in other situations that are non-threatening.
Like in the coffee shop, hey, I want oat milk, not soy milk, and I want, sugar, just some small thing like that.
Yes. And wheel of consent practices is good to just practice really this, to get it really embodied of this and then from there extend.
Betty Martin's great, isn't she? The Wheel of Consent stuff I really recommend to people.
Yes.
And like, is this for me? This is another thing I've seen more female students, I'm going to generalize, just terrible at knowing, is that for me or for you?
Yeah.
And the request comes in the form of disguised service or something like this.
Yes.
Yeah?
Exactly. Yes, definitely.
Okay, so looking for making requests maybe in the small domains first and being really clear about, is it service, is it for you, is it giving, is it taking?
Yeah, who is it for, and knowing when it's for you, and then because this when there's money involved, and it is that's sort of the safety net, or I mean, it all depends on what money means for a person, but it's that basic income. It's a high risk situation,
right?
So to just practice in.
So in that situation, it's like, this matters. This has consequences. So practice where it doesn't matter so much.
Yeah. And
cool.
Yeah. And what I saw you doing this, we're practicing in an embodied situation with people, asking for what they want. I thought that was great.
Yeah, I do little things where we just do like a 3-minute thing, and you can ask for a massage or whatever, and it's like a workshop. So it just gives people an easy kind of thing, because it's set up and it's kind of said, right, this is an exercise, this is the boundaries.
Yeah,
like that can be really good for people. I know Betty Martin does something similar that she's come up with independently. I find that a good way of just teaching people, Or we have one person at lunch get the other person's lunch. Say what they have to bring me this and this, from the lunch table, and it's like some people struggle with that. But again, because it's given permission, it's boundaried, it seems to be a good way in.
Yeah. But also like this practicing, asking, having a role playing a client situation, and that's what I saw you do with them.
Oh, okay, yeah. No, I do that with students. I literally, in the chair behind me, I had a student a week ago, kind of pretending to like phone the client, and I was the client, and they had to ask money, and it's like I was just giving them a stepping stone, and where they could get it wrong, and they could shout and scream, and then try again, and do a centering exercise, and try again. And that was very useful to have that practice space rather than go straight in at the deep end when they're short of money and they desperately need the work,
Yeah. So that's sort of, but I think a great tip that anyone can do sort of with a friend, or, to practice.
Walk it through in a safe space. Yeah. You're living in some eco-village part of the time, right? Did I hear that right?
Yes. Yeah. I'm part of, I don't happen to live there full time now, but have lived, and I plan to go back when my kids are old enough.
It's in Finland?
Yes, in Finland, in south of Finland.
Okay. I was just at Findhorn, so that was one of my first experiences of a eco community. Do you know Findhorn in Scotland?
Yes. Well, I haven't been there, but I know of it, yes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. It's practicing relational awareness, and it's a great place.
I hate community and relationship. Total nightmare. Total, not my idea of a good time at all. Absolute nightmare. Okay. Is there anything that you would have liked to have talked about that we haven't yet? We're kind of coming to a close here. Is there any subject that you're particularly passionate about? Or
no, I think it's we have touched on the very core of all of them. Love, play, sex, money, death.
Oh, good stuff, eh?
Good
in
stuff.
1 hour. Wow, high five us. Okay, Älskling. There's my Swedish. That's one of the few Swedish.
Älskling.
It's such a cute language. I love Swedish. It's so sweet.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so 2 things to finish then. Where can people find out more about you if they want to check out Ritual Play or any of the things you do?
Yes, so it's on the website Ritual. Is it dash when it's in the middle, that line? So ritual-play.com.
Ritual-play.com. Yeah, that's
and then my money work I have written some about on Marina Kronkvist.com. So those are the 2. And then I will so they can find Ritual Play in different cities around the world. Amsterdam, so Holland, Belgium, Denmark, Sweden, in Berlin. There are people, so a little bit, there are people who are practitioners, and on my website they find when I have the next trainings also.
Great. Well, I hope I get to play in the future with you. That sounds like fun stuff.
Yes.
Closing message about the body to take us out here.
Oh. Yeah. Let's just be with the silence.
Oh, what a wonderful end of 250 guests. No one has ever said that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tack, Marina.
Tack, Mark.
Some ways to get more, to give back, and to get more involved now. So the biggest request I have would be to share the podcast with your friends, people that you think would really enjoy it. Email it to them, put it on your social media, tell them about it, old school. Really appreciate that. Equally, if you want to support us financially, you can go to Patreon. That's patreon.com/embodiment podcast and give us $1 an episode. And I'd say they're well worth $1. So that's less than £1 if you're in UK-ish. So yeah, please go there. On the embodifacilitator.com website is where this is hosted. If you're, most people I think listen to for iTunes. iTunes, we'd certainly appreciate a review. The way iTunes works means that a review means more people will find it. iTunes regards it as more important for searches. So even a couple of sentences review really does help as a little thank you to us. And if you want to go to embodifacilitator.com, you can see the actual, links to the sites. There's comments on there. The Facebook group tends to be where people discuss things. So if you go to put in the Embodiment Podcast into Facebook, there's a page which is relatively quiet and a group which does have some discussion on. So I will reply to things personally there. So also on embodifacilitator.com website, there's all sorts of freebies there. There's videos, there's free ebooks, there's ebooks you can buy. And of course, there's our newsletter list. If you want to stay in touch and learn about things like the Embodied Facilitator course and our next Embodied Yoga Principles teacher training, then go to that website and you'll see a little pop-up and you can get the newsletter through there. Okay, so I think they're the main ones. Tell your friends, pay us some money on Patreon, give us a review on iTunes, send us your email if you want to be on the newsletter list, and get involved on the Facebook there. Bit long. Pick whatever you like that works for you. Until next time, welcome home to the body.